Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this latest EU Clusters talk on aerospace and defense. How do we make it more sustainable, more resilient, more competitive as we face competition around the world, including, say, from SpaceX for launches? We are building a new launch site in Sweden. That's great. But there's also cutting ties with Russia and their launches as well. And there are all kinds of economic connections between aerospace and defense and jobs and development and research. We want to talk about that. How is this working on the ground? How can we promote this? This is the latest EU Clusters Talk, a bi-weekly event by the European Cluster Collaboration Platform, ECCP, on behalf of DG GROW at the European Commission. What's the agenda today? Well, we'll start with some news. We'll have a video from our own correspondent. We'll have word from the European Commission, a panel discussion. We want your audience feedback. We want you involved as much as possible. Send us your questions, get involved, and then we'll talk about funding opportunities as well. Tech tips. Your questions, you'll see the button at the bottom that you can hit for Q&A, or also to raise your hand and get involved actually verbally. You can also chat as well. There's always a lot of good information coming out through the chat. It's good to keep an eye on that as well. And cast it wider in the social networks with hashtag EU Clusters Talks, hashtag EU Clusters Talks. This will be recorded for playback. My name is Chris Burns, and I'm introducing to you news from the European Cluster Collaboration Platform from Nina Hoppmann, team member of the ECCP. Nina, take it away.
Good morning, Chris, and good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining this EU Clusters Talk. We have some news from the ECCP that we'd like to share with you. First of all, if you're interested in hosting one of our Clusters Meet Regions events, you can apply for hosting it until the 1st of April 2023, so within 2 months. This events are a great opportunity for national and regional clusters, together with their policymakers, to come together, apply together, and at the event share experiences, learn about how can we create new partnerships and how can we make good use of clusters for the economic development. So we have on the ECCP reports from the past events that you can check out, as well as how the application process works. So we're looking forward to receiving expressions of interest to host such an event. Next, we have the registration open for the C2 Lab, which is an interactive workshop to bring together cluster actors, companies, also research organizations or actors from the civil society to work together on maturing project ideas that you have.
Nina, I saw that this workshop in Lund, it's a cute little town. It's just outside of Malmö and across the bridge from Copenhagen. So I think the transport connections are actually pretty good there, right?
Yes, it's very accessible. So you can fly into Malmö, or you can directly fly into Copenhagen on the 20th, because we will have the event on the 21st and 22nd of March. And you can also participate in other events that take place under the Sweden Innovation Days. So our workshop will be very interactive, focusing on energy transition, circular economy, and other ideas that you would like to work on. And in preparation, we also invite you to join the discussion group that we have on LinkedIn, so that you can already get in touch with other participants or interested people and discuss your ideas. And it's not the only LinkedIn group that we have. There are discussion groups in general from green transition support to cluster networks to support Ukraine. So most of them are open to everybody. Some restricted to, for example, the participants of the Cluster Booster Academy. Check out these groups. You can find them under the link that my colleague puts in the chat. Speaking about Ukraine, we also invite you to a webinar on investing in doing business in Ukraine that is organized by the Enterprise Europe Network in close collaboration with the European Commission. It will take place on the 2nd of February at 10 a.m. And it targets and advisors and cluster managers that support business clients from all sectors of the economy. So in the webinar, they will explore commercial opportunities, and provide participants with the knowledge on how to establish collaboration for the reconstruction efforts that we see ahead. You can register for this webinar in an online form that we share in the chat. And last but not least, coming to also the topic of the day, the COSME project Prestigious has published a map of drone actors in Europe, which is very interesting to check out. They, first of all, explain their project, they explain who the major drone actors in Europe are, and also the value chain and how it is made up. Interesting also to have a look. And with that, I think we can go right into our topic. Thanks, Chris.
Yes, as you know, drones are playing a key role in the conflict between Ukraine and Russia. So it's very, very interesting, very important sort of sector to be looking at and being part of. Any case, yeah, let's go to our video from our own correspondent. This is by a group, a Eurocluster group called Leviatad. And Giovanni Caprino is over there in Liguria on the Italian Riviera. And they aim at creating the first Eurocluster of excellence on naval defense. It's Italy-based, but involves several other countries. Take a listen.
Hello everyone, I am Giovanni Caprino, General Manager of Distretto Ligure Tecnologie Marine. Our cluster is a regional cluster. It's a cluster on the blue economy in Liguria region. Our cluster is very important for our territory because it put together the research and the industrial activity. One of our activity is to create a network without an industrial to work in Europe and the last part of the world. In this activity of the internalization, we are involved in Sea Future exhibition, which is one of the very important exhibition for dual use on blue technology. We are involved by industrial of military, industrial, and civilian industrial to work all together. For this reason, we are leader in a Leviathan project, COSME project, is with the object to create a very important network in Europe for our small medium enterprise and other medium enterprise in Europe to work all together on defense, industrial, and civil industrial in the blue economy. In our project in Leviathan, there is other country, of course. There is France, people, Belgium, Croatia, and of course Italy. Is very important on this project to work all together just to improve the digitalization and the internalization of our activity. We are sure this is a very important goal to realize a good network to improve the business in our excellent activity on this field.
So our thanks to Giovanni and his team for that video from Leviathan. Let us move on to the European Commission. A few words from the European Commission, starting with Giancarlo Granero, Head of Unit Coordination and Interinstitutional Relations at DG DEFI. Giancarlo, you're going to give us a bit of the big picture, and I understand there's a consultation happening, or that will happen, right, on this issue.
Yeah, precisely, Chris. Thanks, and good morning to everyone. Indeed, we are on the verge of launching a public consultation, and the way we want to do it this morning is that I will give you a bit of a broad picture, and then my deputy Catherine Eginard will go a bit more into detail also on the next steps. So I will try to be very brief. You rightly want to have more the feedback of the clusters than our presentation, and we are also very interested into that. So we are speaking of an important topic, which is the transition pathway for the aerospace and defense ecosystem. In the context, of course, of the green and digital transition that all our ecosystems have to go through. Plus, I would say, a third element, a very important element, which is the resilience of those ecosystems. Resilience has taken a bigger role, a bigger importance in this, I would say, triple transition now, because of the geopolitical context. You and the participants certainly have heard about the recent initiative or planned initiative of the EU in this sense for industry, the Clean Tech Industry Act, the Sovereignty Fund. So a lot of initiatives are coming down the road for industry overall. The goal is, of course, to transform the business models and the value chains of these ecosystems. And such a transition requires a concrete plan, requires an actionable plan. And this is a transition pathway. This is what these transition pathways are designed for. How do we do them? There is a standardized process, I would say, for all the ecosystem. And the first step is indeed that the Commission publishes a staff working document, so a document which is then accessible to everyone, where we sketch out the current state of play, planned initiatives, scenarios, and then we get the feedback of the of the ecosystem itself, of course, but also more broadly. Then this is subject to public consultation, and finally there is this co-drafting part between the Commission and the ecosystem, which delivers the actual pathway. Now, the aerospace and defense was not labeled as a priority ecosystem, which means it was not part of the ones which were first adopted back in 2021. 5 pathways were adopted in 2021, but we are part, if you want, of the last batch in terms of time, but it doesn't mean, of course, that this is a less important ecosystem, rather the opposite. We want to do things well. And it will be the transition pathway for our ecosystem will be completed in this year, most likely in the third quarter of this year. And voila, that's where I would stop, and I would let Catherine give you more details on the, where we are on the staff working document and what happens next. Thank you.
Okay, that was great. That was very quick, Giancarlo. Grazie molto. Let's move on to Catherine Eginard, Deputy Head of Unit Coordination and Institutional Relations at DG Défi. Catherine, bonjour. You're going to talk about, how do we make this transition greener, more digital, and develop those skills? I think those are some of the issues involved in making this transition, right?
Indeed. So, well, thanks, Chris, and good morning, everybody. Indeed, I will give you a bit of flavor, I would say, because as Giancarlo explained, well, we are really on the making and finalizing our document. So I hope that I will give you some appetite to further contribute within the process. So how do we make it? So indeed, it's an important question, and this is how we try to answer to the question. It's a quite long, I would say narrative, and I will give you today some elements that we have put in the document. I will follow the structure of the document. I will try to keep within the 8-10 minutes. So it's long, so I will be as short as possible. My best friend Churchill said it's very difficult to make a short contribution. It's easier to make a long one. So I will try to stay short. So we look at what do we have today also in our environment. So what are the main challenges? What we have today, we know that we are vulnerable in terms of supply chain, of also external dependency from external country. We look also at the impact of the post-COVID, that's what is happening now in Ukraine. We know that we have some strengths. Our single market, it's really a good, a strong element to facilitate our growth and welfare, but at the same time, we know that we have to strengthen our investments, especially in green digital resilience. So it has a big impact on the civil aeronautic, it's really part of it. And for space, well, we do have an element that we are talking quite regularly is the launchers. So if some of you have listened yesterday, the introduction on the space conference, so you have seen that those topics are really on the scene. Then we look also, well, if we look in more policy aspects, so what do we have to set our scene? We have the cross-cutting policies in green digital resilience. So I would say some buzzwords. So Green Deal, EU climate targets, plan for 2030, even 2040, Fit for 55, Repower EU, clean energy, hydrogen strategy, digital decades, also the CRM Act, critical raw material. We are also looking at synergy between civil, defense, and space in terms also of what we have in our budget for the EU, but also how we can look at the synergy for also the different technologies. We do have the space program, we have Horizon Europe, civil aeronautic, we know that it's highly dependent on innovation. Also for the civil aeronautic, we have the new islands for zero emission. I believe Aerospace Valley is part of these islands. We look also at our skills. We need to reskill and upskill our workforce, and especially on the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So this is really the first element on the big picture. Then if we look at the resilience element that we have, there is one important element that we try to develop in the document is the technological non-dependence. So how we manage to reach this element, looking at critical raw material, our critical technology. So what we need to develop for our strategic sector. We look also at the dependence on import, how we can reduce those elements. And if we try to be a bit more concrete, we have developed also an observatory for critical technologies for space and aerospace, where we need to really identify, monitor, assess, and the first outcome will be delivered in the first quarter of this year. We look also how to be more resilient, and also with the competitive, how to have a more competitive ecosystem. So innovation really it is at the center of the discussion. Also how in Europe we develop our technological excellence. One important element also in the field of resilience is all the discussion related to security and how do we protect our critical infrastructure, our transport route. Also, we look at how we can better use the foreign direct investment regulation also to protect our assets, our companies. So this is the really important element that we have for the resilience. And then, well, I know that you want to discuss afterwards, so I would have maybe a question for you, and it's also part of the document. We put question to really to encourage the discussion. So what is the role of different level of public authorities to address all those challenges, and also how we become a made in Europe for our industry, SMEs, and startup in the ecosystem. If we look now at the green part, so as Giancarlo mentioned in the introduction, so really green tech, clean tech is really our keywords, but buzzword for in our environment. So we have really to work towards our technology, which is completely linked to what I already mentioned in the part on resilience. We know that we have also the big objective to be climate resilient, to be a climate resilient society by 2050. And then we know that our ecosystem bring a significant help on the green part to monitor. We are data provider in the field of space, also service provider for climate change. So it's an extremely important element. At the same time, we have to green all the part of the space, being upstream, midstream, and downstream. Doing that, we look at also our corporate sustainability. We need to make indeed business to be competitive, but it needs also to be important for people, for our environment, where we have to look at environment, economic, and social aspects. If we look at the product, also, sorry, you wanted to say something.
Well, I just I see that our time has actually run out, but if you can sum up, then we can move on.
Right.
I know you're asking, the question you're posing is how the level of public authorities in this transition, right? I mean, can you be a little bit more specific, or are you throwing it out to the audience? What do you need from us as the European Commission in making this happen? And obviously there has to be a balance in terms of financially, there has to be a balance of private investment, public finance. And there are billions from the EU side, but there's also the need for private investment as well, right?
Completely. Maybe I will just sum up. I will put some 2-3 more points.
Okay.
Also, in terms of, if we look at the clean tech, so do you see any barrier for you in terms of technology to really manage to to be the first made in Europe in terms of clean tech? If we also look at the digital part, so again, important, we have really high ambition at EU level. We have to develop new business model, as Giancarlo mentioned in the introduction. So for you also, one of the question, what would be the technology to be developed in priority, to be greener and more sustainable? Private also, we look at the investment, private investment also. Yeah. Well, the transition should come with the private investment, but at the same time at EU level, well, we try to provide more sustainable finance in terms of budget, but also of framework. Well, if we take the example, we have Cassini that you know quite well, was supporting tech startup. So that was, and then, yeah, if I have to sum up, so we need to put in place action and measure to support this transition. It's a co-creation exercise, so we do have many questions for you. We really want you to be involved. We will have a public consultation that it is extremely important that, well, we really expect contributions. Also, based on the contribution, we will organize some workshop. We can already be in touch if you want to organize the workshop. I think it's quite important that this document, this transition, as we say, is a co-creation exercise, and we have to make it really co-created. And we feel the owner, both the industry, the stakeholders, and also the Commission. So that would be my main point. And it's really a big exercise to be very short. So
no, you did it though, Catherine. Merci beaucoup. Very, very important to point those out. You've actually thrown down the gauntlet for this panel now, as well as Giancarlo has. In this panel discussion on and sounding out, and also all of you out there listening as well. I see many of you connected. I see great action there. Hello to all of you in the chat there from across Europe. Very impressive. We need your input. This is actually almost kind of a public consultation of sorts. That's what these cluster collaboration talks are all about. Let's move to this panel debate on cluster activities for a sustainable and resilient ecosystem in aerospace and defense. Fabienne Deveron, head of European office Aerospace Valley, it's a Eurocluster. You have a lot of things to talk about. We talked about that the other day. Can we start with Metastars? It's a 30-month project supporting SMEs in aerospace and defense.
Yes, thank you, Chris, and good morning, everyone. Thanks for inviting me to this panel. So just a short, some words about our cluster. Aerospace Valley cluster is a sovereign French cluster focusing on aeronautics, space, drones, and defense. So I think representing well the ASD ecosystem. We have about 860 members. A lot of them are SMEs, more than 500 SMEs, but we have also academia and public authorities in our cluster. So I think we are quite well representing the value chain in this ASD ecosystem. Also regarding defense, over 300 members working for defense sector. Our main action is focusing on support to innovation because we are very aware of all innovative projects of this ecosystem, and we are also quite specialist on funding programs, either public, national, regional, European programs, but also private investment funds. We have also other competencies dealing with training, education of the ecosystem. We have a lot of academia and engineers schools in our cluster. And also we have very specific initiatives for supporting entrepreneurial and supporting to startups especially. So I think for the topic of this cluster talk, we have good assets in our cluster. So about the Metastars project. In fact, Metastars project is an Eurocluster project. We started this project in September last year, and it will end in February 2025. We are coordinating this project, and we have in our consortium the CTA cluster from Spain. It's a digital cluster. We have Coralia in Greece, which is a space cluster, and we have also Polish cluster, the Aviation Valley cluster.
Because Fabienne, you're in Toulouse, right? Where is
yes, sorry, I didn't mention
right.
that.
Yeah,
I'm in Toulouse, but my cluster is covering 2 regions of south of France. It's Occitanie, so the region of Toulouse, and also Bordeaux, Nouvelle-Aquitaine. So we are quite a large cluster covering a very big part of southern France. So about the Metastars. Metastars, yes, we are coordinating this project funded by the Eurocluster program, and the aim will be to help the ASD ecosystem resilience and support to this twin transition. We are talking about the green one and the digital one. So what will we do in this Metastar project? We will first work on the establishment of industrial roadmaps for the ASD transition pathway. We will work to elaborate some very topics to help to this transition pathway. And how will we do that? First, we will have a series of workshops to deal with this issue. The first one is will take place on February 3rd, and in this workshop we will see how ASD product service could be implemented to support life in severe environment. So I can put the link of because the registrations are opened. So if you want, I can put the link to registration in the chat.
Very quickly, Fabienne, I know there's I want to also talk to Isabel and Krzysztof, but the thing about
the workshop, then we will have also distributions of vouchers, a lot of vouchers, mainly for SMEs, but also dealing with technologies, innovation support, international also, and training education. That's the aim of this Euroclusters project. So a lot of vouchers, yes, 74 vouchers for ASD SMEs.
Okay, great. And I thought there was interesting about new space actors like nanosats. I think that's very interesting, concretely, something that you're supporting, right?
Yes, for the space sector, we have also several projects. And one I wanted to mention for the space sector is a Protect project, which is an Horizon Europe project. In this project, we want to help public authority procurement. Public procurement is for us a very important issue, especially to help the space downstream sector mentioned by Catherine. So the Protect project also is willing to help this public procurement leverage for space applications.
And nanosats are part of that?
Yeah, sure. Nanosat, well, nanosat is more on the upstream sector. So I would say that for this nanosat sector, we have a specific action in the cluster named New Space Factory. So we are helping the nanosat producers, but also companies dealing with space telecommunication technologies, and we are helping them on the international stage with this New Space Factory.
Okay, so, great. And yeah, you mentioned Horizon Europe. That's 95 billion euros out there over 7 years. That is backing a lot of these different projects. I want to come back to you, Fabienne, but let's move on to Isabelle Tauvena-Picot, Director Europe International, Alpha RLH. That's Route des Lasers et des Hyperfréquences.
Very good, Chris.
Alpha RLH. Well, I learned well at home. That you accompany enterprises and laboratories in the montage, the building, and expertise and finance, also including the money through the European Defence Fund. Is that right?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. So it's really a pleasure to be with you today. So just a few words of Alpha RLH. It's quite difficult to pronounce anyway, but I will try to explain. In fact, we are a very deep tech cluster. That means we have two main pillars. One is on photonics, the other one on electronics. So between those two main pillars, you have materials and digitalization. So of course we are very complementary to, I would say, application clusters. That's why we can work with Fabienne or other clusters that are really deeply rooted in ASD, and we are technical providers. So where I can jump into what Catherine Eginor has just said about clean tech, of course, it's very important for us. And but by the way, at the same level, I would say we need investment. So these are the two levels we can act on. And I would like to add others on, of course, people. We need well-educated and trained people with talented in those deep technologies. It's not really simple. It's quite difficult to have very good engineers to attract them on those scientific disciplines. So that's why we try to do. As a cluster, we are really in the core of the quadruple, and I prefer now the quintuple helix. That means we are working with universities, industries, government, public, and environment. So that's why we can act, doing interaction between all of these partners and create, by the way, with this knowledge society and economy, we can innovate and I would say try to tackle with the different challenge we have on digitalization and green transition and resilience. By the way, for me, resilience is very linked to ASD. With ASD, we have security, a secure and robust economy, and that's very important. And what can we do as a cluster? We can act on different levels. The first one on people, second one on innovation and research and development. That's why, like Fabienne, we are working on EU funding, EU code for research and development, but not only on the EU level, we have to work on the internationalization as well. And that's what we are doing with R4H for many years. We have offices in China, in Japan, in US and Canada as well. We help our deep tech startups and SMEs and large companies to have connection to all the customers abroad and to see what is done there. But of course, we have to keep in mind our sovereignty at the same time. So it's quite a difficult exercise from time to time to keep the technology inside Europe, to find out the good resources outside, because of course, Katrina Egina has pointed out the need to have the critical raw materials there. So we have to think about circularity as well, how we can work on the life cycle of a technological in entire life cycle way. And I mean, it's really very important nowadays. And I think we are probably close the loop with the ecosystem. We have seen during the pandemic that it was very important to connect everybody, to find out solidarity and try to tackle the different challenge altogether. So that's very important, and that's where your clusters are very important. So we are now the possibility to have funding for clusters, and your clusters are, by the way, one of the levels we can act on. Like Fabienne, we have a neuro cluster which is called PMAP for sustainability. So everything is in the word. PMAP is photonics, and sustainability, there you have clean tech, of course. So, okay. Well, I am very talkative, so probably I have to stop there. But
that's all right, Isabelle. I mean, I'm just curious because Kathleen was asking this panel what technology to prioritize to make things greener. Can you give one?
Okay. Of course, photonics.
Okay, photonics. Okay.
Photonics is everywhere. You know, in connection. Of course, it's a key enabling technology, and it's not very well known, I would say, by the society and public authorities. That's why we are working on that. So we are a member of a big European project which is called Photon Hub Europe. Here there are vouchers for SMEs on innovation, and I would say all the value chain. We can start with a very low TRL and growing to TRL up to 8. So that's good opportunities. So well, but photonics and electronics, they are working all together. You can't do electronics without photonics, and you can't do electronics without they are very connected. Okay. So those are, for me, the main technologies we have to work on. Okay. On the question of critical raw materials as well, with the earth, where all this kind of priority the EU is working on. It's very important.
Okay, very good. Isabelle, hang on, please. Let's move on to Krzysztof Krystowski, Managing Editor of Silesian Aviation Cluster. Yeah, you're involved in gliders, light and ultralight airplanes, drones. Before you start, by the way, I just want to remind all those watching, please get involved. I see the chat is very busy. That's great. And please do. We're going to get to your questions and comments as soon as we can in the next few minutes. So please look at the button there in the bottom, the buttons. There's the Q&A button to put your question. There's the chat. You can also raise your hand there on the right side there at the bottom. Raise your hand, actually get involved. We can put you on screen and see you and hear you, what you have to say about all of this. Krzysztof, proszę.
Hello, good morning. Good morning, everybody. Um, I'm representing a cluster from Silesia region, which is southern part of Poland. We have more than 100 companies gathered in our organization, but we are active in entire Poland, not only Silesia. For our international colleagues, let me explain. Silesia is the most industrialized region in Poland, which is located very close to the border with Czech Republic. But we have companies from entire Poland, but mainly from regions which are the neighboring regions like Lesser Poland, Greater Poland, and Lower Silesia, plus Warsaw region, which is called Mazovia. So generously, we are one of the 20 key national clusters, because in Poland we have our Ministry of Technology and Economic Development established a few years ago a program which is for the best, which is a certification of the best clusters in Poland, and we are one of those 20. And we are the only one Polish cluster which has a gold label certificate. So what is, as you mentioned before, what is our main specialization? We are very much focused on light aircrafts, okay, including gliders, but also we have companies which are suppliers of aircraft's components, including aero engine components. The biggest company which belongs to our cluster is Avio Aero, which is a former Italian company, now part of General Electric. But we have plenty of SMEs. Majority of our companies are Polish origin SMEs, who are very much involved in the composite technologies, and that's why it came
Ultralight.
from gliders. We have in our group producers of so strong gliders, one of the most famous gliders in the world, which are used by sport gliders, including we have in our cluster as ambassador of our cluster, we have a very famous sportsman who was about 20 times champion of the world in gliding. Is a Polish citizen. So this is our heritage. What came from that is the fact that drones started to be very efficiently developed by our companies, which was quite natural for them when they started from light materials, composite materials, etc. So we have now mix also of ICT companies which are very much involved in this drone cooperation. Thanks to that, we are now the center of excellence, kind of the point of gravity for entire Poland regarding drones, and we are active not only inside Poland regarding drones but also outside. Because of that, we have established together with our German partners the organization which is called European Drone Cooperation. Our German partners from the cluster Kurpas from Berlin, and now we have 12 different clusters who are gathered in this organization. You can find it on this. You can find it on internet. European Drone Cooperation. Now there is 12 clusters from 10 countries, including, for example, Aerospace Valley from France, my colleague. So because of that, we have this year we will have 2 events, drone European events. The first one will be beginning of June near Berlin in Wildau. it will be then the next organized together by our Silesian Aviation Cluster and colleagues from Germany. And October, every 2 years, there is a drone show organized in Bordeaux by our colleagues from France. What we are doing in Poland, and this is quite similar to the project which is called Prestigious, but we have this financed by a Polish agency. This is a Polish Agency for Entrepreneurship Development, acronym PARP. And thanks to support from this national agency and European funds, we as a cluster, we are building now the internet platform for producers, OEMs of drones, subcontractors, providers of service, etc. And this web platform will be open not only for Polish companies, but also for entire European partners. So I think that this is something which could be quite similar to Prestigious project, but we think about that much deeper and much more, let's say, business oriented, not only to find the companies, but also to give them floor to matchmaking, to build together a supply chain.
Christoph, those events that you mentioned, maybe you can put those some links to those in the chat so people can look at that. What about what Catherine and Giancarlo are looking for is to know what sort of barriers there are to overcome. What's a barrier that you're dealing with there on the ground in making this happen? Christoph, can I ask you? Yeah, can you turn your mic back on? Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, what can you mention one barrier that you're trying to overcome in making these projects happen?
The problem regarding drone industry, I think, is similar in every European countries. That this market is very fragmented. We have plenty of very small companies, even not small medium size, but rather small companies. They don't know each other, and we think that to help them to develop faster is to make them chance to find each other and to come in touch and to maybe find a common interest and realize common projects. And this is why we invented this idea of web platform, starting, as I said before, from Poland, but we are very much being part of the European Drone Cooperation, very much open for our European colleagues. Another element regarding drones is about regulation and standardization. There are two elements which are very important for so young business, and this is something we have to be in touch with our partners from our local governments, but also from European Commission. I think this is a lot of things to do on these areas. Okay, very good.
Yeah, I wanted to come back to Isabel, because I see in the chat somebody was asking about photonics. Can you be a little more concrete about what that means concretely in terms of products? It is the physical science of light waves, but how is that applied concretely?
Yeah, that's a good sum up, I would say, of photonics. At least when you have light, you have photon. So that's a very small amount of light photon. So that's why we now in communication, we all of us know that we use fibers. So in these fibers, you have photonics. So that's, of course, in our economy, which is really linked to communication, it's very key. So that's really important. And you have already understand or heard of quantum technologies as well. So photonics is very linked to quantum technologies as well. And in the satellite, you have a scientific instrument that used spectroscopy as an example. So I don't want to go further in science, but well, of course, photonics is very linked to all this with laser activities and industrialization as well. So we are we have surrounded by photonics everywhere.
Okay, very good. I have a question here to ask. Please do add your questions in the Q&A or in the chat is fine also, or raise your hand. We want to get you involved as much as possible. We want to get your feedback on what's been said so far. This is a very important project that the European Commission undertakes to try to develop and push ahead with aerospace and defense, which has so many applications. I've been to so many conferences where it's it's not just the hardware, but it's also the software, and it's the use of the information through the satellites we have, our eyes in the sky, through Galileo, Copernicus, for even dealing with disasters and so forth, and of course climate change. So it's a wide gamut of things to develop, and there's a lot of competition out there to deal with. There's a question from Benoit Esman. Besides the focus on innovation, do ASD, Aerospace and Defense clusters, have specific actions to strengthen defense SMEs' position in the EU market? Since the war of aggression from Russia on Ukraine, many member states have increased their defense budget, yet it benefited third country companies and not EU ones, e.g. Poland buying military material from South Korea, drones from Turkey, we could go on. How can we better support EU SMEs to get deals with the member states? Who'd like to jump first on that? Fabienne, peut-être?
Yes, so in terms of supporting SMEs for the defense sector, we in the cluster, we work very closely with the National Authority for Defense. So we have different, I would say, support schemes at the national level with the French National Authorities for Defense, but we also have actions dealing with the European Defence Fund. Since I would say 3 to 4 years, we are following these schemes and we are organizing several events to promote the European Defence Fund. And we have very specific actions for our SMEs, helping them to create innovative projects that will answer this European Defence Fund calls. Yesterday we had, because we are a member of the European Network of Defence Regions, ENDR, from DG Defense, with people from DG Defense also. And we organized yesterday in Bordeaux, and I think Isabelle mentioned it in the chat, because we were co-organizers for this event on greener defense. How defense sector could appropriate some green technologies, and we discuss on that on the energy sector, on materials also, and also on other important issues, how to develop skills and competencies, and how to make a good promotion of defense careers, because I think there is a lack of, so from some years, a lack of interest for this defense jobs, let's say. Okay. So that's a type of support we are doing for the defense sector.
Okay, Isabella, do you want to add anything to that?
No, that was just the point of the ENGR. It's just well, a good example of what we can do as a cluster, organizing, event for workshop, for networking, and try to connect people, to attract them in their sector. That's very important to have them on board. All the talent are needed, because of course, in this ASD, we need a very high level of technology and, of course, of skills and competitiveness as well for the industry. So that's very important to work on that as well.
Okay, everyone, keep your questions coming in, and your comments as well. Very important that we're seeing things in the chat. Another question from Benoit for ASD clusters, aerospace and defense. France, Germany, and Spain have recently announced a joint development of a future combat air system. That's a warplane, I think. are EU clusters being involved in this project that could potentially highlight European ASD clusters cooperation? Maybe Krzysztof, any thoughts on that? I know you're in light planes, but maybe you have some more information.
No, I know. This is, you see, this is quite often that these companies, these projects are led rather by big OEMs like Airbus, for example.
Yeah.
So there is the way how to involve SMEs in this kind of project is to be just a part of stable, fixed part of supply chain of this big players.
Yeah.
And clusters could very much help, because in clusters, in majority, we have obviously SMEs, but very often, and this is the case of my cluster in where we have General Electric, where our colleagues from France have Airbus, from Germany they have Airbus as well, etc. Thales and Leonardo in Italy. So this is quite natural for us, for cluster managers, that we should, thinking about interest of our SMEs, we should keep direct contact with those big players and support SMEs to be very, very close to them. Then when these new projects are going to be established, our SMEs should be naturally part of this project. This is one point. Another point is that a lot of SMEs could not fit in these supply chains of big players. So we should have, on the level of European Commission, European institutions rather, for example, in Horizon Europe, we should have place for clusters, for example, for organizations of many European clusters to represent interests of those SMEs in these big programs. So to play kind of a role when to sit at the same table where is Airbus, Leonardo, Thales, other big players, plus some representation of European aerospace clusters. We have this kind of representation, which is European Aerospace Cluster Platform, EACP, which gathered more than, if I remember well, around 45 clusters from Europe, including ourselves, including Aerospace Valley from France, etc. So this is also quite natural thing. And the third one, let me come back a bit to the previous subject, is that clusters could also have could be also very helpful and could play very active role in promotion of internationalization or just international sales of our members. And what we are doing, for example, in Poland, we have some support from our government and from European funds as well to go together with our members abroad and support them in promoting their products abroad. Thanks to that, for example, from my cluster, I have two companies which are supplying drones to Ukraine now, thanks to this kind of activity that we are very much engaged in this process.
Very interesting. Okay, I want to get come back to Catherine and Giancarlo, what's happening on the EU level. But first, you mentioned, Krzysztof, Airbus, and Fabienne, Airbus is in your neighborhood there, near Toulouse. What sort of, how is Airbus working with smaller suppliers, and I know they are, to develop these systems?
Yes, so Airbus, yes, is in fact our president, our chairman of the cluster, which is an association. I recall. So our chairman is coming from Airbus. Is Mr. Bruno Darboux is from Airbus. So I think we have closer relations with Airbus and the supply chain. Of course, the major OEMs mentioned by Christos, yes, they are part of the cluster. So we are, in fact, we are there, especially for the SMEs of the supply chain, because of course, the big industries, they are very active in this and also in this transition pathway. And I just mentioned on the chat the Clean Aviation Program. You may certainly know, which is very active also in trying to reach some zero emission aircraft objectives. So we are working also with the Clean Aviation team, and we just started to coordinate this ICARI project, which started in January. We are in a European collaboration with other aeronautics clusters from Hamburg Aviation, for example, and DAC also in Italy. And we think that to try to support this supply chain SMEs in this zero emission target, zero emission aircraft target, I think we have to help them to innovate and to also to reach fundings for innovation. They are working, from some of them, they are working with big industry, but I think they need to innovate from themselves, not only, you know, well, of course, for helping, for working together with the big industry, but we need to help them to propose to the big industry very innovative technologies, because they have also a lot of agility compared to the big industry. And so they can, I think, be very important in this innovation for the transition.
Can I go to Giancarlo? Any thoughts on that, on a European, on an EU level of encouraging the involvement of SMEs in these bigger projects?
Yes, well, thoughts and actions, because I think a lot is already ongoing. While listening to the debate, I mean, I noted out three points. One is, of course, we are in contact, regular contact with the ecosystem. One of the channels we have is the expert group on the ASD industrial ecosystems. It has 60 members. It's a big group. I don't remember them by heart, but I'm pretty sure the clusters are represented into that group. And of course, we tried in this in selecting the 60 members to have big and small. So we have the big ones, we have the big players, as you can imagine, but we also have representative of SMEs and startups and the so-called, for example, new space, new entrants in the space domain. A second point is on the, I don't know how to call it, I don't want to say EU preference, but you know, this, how do we support our EU industry, our EU value chains to make them stable in space and in defense? Now, if I look at the defense side, of course, we have the European Defense Fund ongoing, but we also have a proposal being negotiated on the exotic name of EDIRPA, which is a bit of a shorter term instrument, also to replenish the stocks following the help, the support of the EU to Ukraine. And we will have, it is planned as a proposal for this year, the EDIP, so the European Defence Investment Programme. In all of these, the idea is to support the EU industrial base. And this is our legal scope, margin of maneuver for the EU. But we see that in the debates with the member states and also with the European Parliament, that, I mean, if you want, the practical feasibility of this is often put into question. So we have also to have this reality check, you know, do we really have the capacity of our defense industry, for example, to supply what EDIRPA is supposed to finance? And a final point, maybe we have yesterday and today, it's ongoing, the space conference, the annual space conference here in Brussels. And I've been there yesterday and I heard a lot of converging about, you know, this idea that we really have to pool forces, that we have to stop the infighting within the EU, be it between the big players and the small players, the established one and the new entrants, etc. We really have to pool forces because we face external competition. Yeah. So we want to, you know, of course, we are happy to have still competition within the EU, and that's clearly good for the health of the ecosystem. But we also have to be aware that, you know, with the Inflation Reduction Act in the USA, with, of course, the massive subsidies we have in China and other economies, we really have to step up and pool forces and work together to have a competitive ecosystem in the EU.
Yeah, I think interoperability is also extremely important, at least on the defense level. There are too many different weapon systems that need to be consolidated, right?
Yeah, and that's of course one of the main goals of the European Defence Fund.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, we have just a few minutes left. If anybody would like to raise your hand, please jump in. We'd love you to be part of this discussion. Catherine, can I come back quickly to you? You were mentioning zero emissions aviation, I believe. How can the EU promote that among the clusters?
Okay, it was not that I wanted to mention.
Oh, I thought so. I thought that was on my list.
Okay, that's okay. But I will answer anyway.
Oh, great! You're wonderful.
2 points and 2 points to follow up what also Giancarlo.
Because it's about green tech, isn't it? I mean, we want to make this tech advancement in aerospace and defense, and part of that is zero emissions aviation, right?
Indeed, completely. It's part of the big objective. So, well, you may know that we have, to answer quickly on that one, and maybe then to enlarge the discussion. For the zero emission, well, it's a big initiative which has been launched, is the Alliance. So really aiming to have all the participants, all the members working together towards the zero emission. So it's a quite concrete element. And then the second point also I wanted to make, and it's a bit broader to just the question you have made and to follow up what Giancarlo mentioned. There is another element that we have also to consider in our work now, and this discussion that we have also at the EU level is also to work more on the different synergies between our industry. So if we are working quite a lot now between civilians and defense, and how do we use the different synergy and the dual use in terms of technology, and that it's a quite important element also for our industry and in all our technology, helping the zero emission, helping and all the work which is being done on the clean aviation, clean energy, hydrogen or clean hydrogen. And also we use the different technology because we cannot afford today to have different use of to develop different technology for specific use, but we are really today in that context, and we do have quite a lot of discussion, reflection to push for this this development for the future, certainly for the next MFF. And also discussing now is what we have today.
That's
what can we do?
The multi-annual financial, the budget, the long-term budget of the EU.
Yes, but it's the two things are completely linked. It's the question of budget, but also a question of how we encourage all the activity in terms of research and innovation that we have.
Right. I'd like to move quickly to Krzysztof on the ground. What is going on as far as green tech, promoting the green transition where you are, Krzysztof? Can you add to that?
Yes, this is obvious for every industrial ecosystems that green transition is something we have to face with. Exactly the same for aviation industry. We don't notice this so much in defense industry, to be very honest with you. But regarding aviation, yes, very much. There is a lot of new research, especially research and development activity regarding new materials which could help, especially composites materials in our sector. Also new engineering, new design of the aircraft which could decrease the fuel consumption. Regarding aero engines, this is exactly the same, about changes in design of the engines which could reduce the fuel consumption, but also reduce emissions not only of CO2 but also NOx, etc. And regarding the light aircrafts, there is a lot of things regarding the electric propulsion. This is something which is now tested and sometimes even used by some aircrafts, completely electric propulsion. There are some technical obstacles. There are some issues which has to be solved, especially regarding the balance between the weight of batteries and the time of which when they could be used. But for example, one of our producer is testing solutions with the relatively short usage of batteries, but for aircrafts which are training aircrafts, when there is a training hour, and every training hour you can just replace the battery by the new one, and so you don't lose time for charging them. So yes, we notice a lot of movement, especially in aviation sector regarding this green transition.
Okay, very good. Let me move to Antonio Novo Guerrero. You have raised your hand. Antonio, can we bring you in, please? Can you turn your camera on?
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can we see you?
I cannot see the options to turn my camera on, so I will speak without camera. Sorry.
Just go ahead and talk, that's great. That's fine, you can, yeah.
Yes, now I can activate it.
Voila, okay.
Hello, I am Antonio. I am president of the European Cluster Alliance. I just wanted to mention that we are participating in the EU Industrial Forum, ASECA, and we are one of the co-curators of the transition task force 2, the task force that is working on transition pathway. We have been very, very active on the definition of the addendum for the blueprint on the transition pathway that is specifically oriented to improve the readiness of the industrial ecosystems to a potential war situation. So, and we have involved many of the clusters here on this addendum, and I want to repeat our interest and willingness to contribute in a very active form to the development of the future transition pathways. So we want to contribute to the staff working document, to the public consultation to be open. I am happy to see that it will be open on February.
Yeah.
And we are willing to also participate in the different actions or groups that the Commission could create or organize in the coming months. So this is an open offer of collaboration to DG Defense from our side, okay? And I want also to encourage the rest of the cluster here to participate in the conversation, you know, because we want not to only be speaking hearing the speakers, but also the rest of the attendants. So I will cut my cut, okay, and invite the rest to really contribute.
Yes, Antonio, thank you. Yes, this is, we're sounding all of you out there on the ground. We want to know your thoughts. It's great that everybody's many of you are involved in the chat, but let's get you on camera. That would be great to make you part of the talk. So we have more events coming up. Thank you, Antonio. Thank you to all the speakers. We have run out of time. I want to go quickly back to Nina for funding opportunities. Nina, please.
Thank you very much, Chris, and thank you everybody for the discussion. I've been listening closely. Regarding funding opportunities that are available right now related to the ASD ecosystem, you can find an Erasmus Plus program related to skills, so a topic I was mentioned in the discussion that is needed alliances for sectoral cooperation on skills. We're looking for partnerships to implement coherent and comprehensive set of sectorial or cross-sectorial activities for talent and skills development. So this is open to partners from the public and private organizations in the EU and associated third countries, with a deadline on the 3rd of May. You see the topic ID in the chat, or on the screen, or the link in the chat. It is published on the Funding and Tenders portal. Regarding opportunities for SMEs, the Secure IT project, which aims to increase the security of current applications, services, and infrastructures, is having a call for SMEs with the deadline of the 14th of March. They also organize an online matchmaking session on the 8th of February, and they distribute 2 types of vouchers to SMEs, one for prototyping and one for demonstration. So that might also be a great opportunity for SMEs to work on their solutions. Another call from the project is the Amulet second open call, with the aim to create new value chains through projects that foster the presentation of advanced lightweight materials. We talked about that as well, in the sectors of building, aerospace and aeronautics, energy and automotive. The deadline for the call is 22nd of March, and SMEs can be funded to different options, one for feasibility studies, one for demonstration, and one for support services to follow up. You can find information on the funding box on the Amulet call website. You find the link in the chat. And last but not least, the SURE 5.0 project is having a call open for the acceleration program. The project aims to support European SMEs working in the mobility, transport, and automotive, aerospace, and electronics ecosystem for the digital transformation. The deadline is the 1st of March, and you see here the 2 phases of the acceleration program. One, to develop a roadmap and a community and alliance of practice. And in the second phase, you see that SMEs can get up to 50K for the implementation of the transition plan, plus support services that they can find in the catalog. So hopefully there's something interesting for the SMEs and for you in here. And with back to you, Chris, for the closing.
A lot of things to get involved in. Nina, thank you so much. This wraps up the EU Clusters Talk, this bi-weekly event by the European Cluster Collaboration Platform, ECCP. Take a look there at the next talks that we're going to have. Please get involved, please register. This has been recorded, so you can get back to it if you want. There will be a report on it. Hashtag EU Clusters Talks, keep that in mind as well. My name is Chris Burns. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you next time.